Hi everyone, meteorologist Steve Caparata here with another episode of Coast and Climate. You know, flooding is really an ongoing concern here in South Louisiana at all times, right? But especially right now, while we're still in the heart of hurricane season, it's something that we're all kind of hyper aware about and something that worries a lot of us, especially in the wake of what happened in 2016. An important part of the equation when it comes to flooding in our part of the world, around Baton Rouge especially, is this Comite River Diversion Project, right? We've gotten some new updates on that in the last week or so. So I thought this was a great time to bring in somebody that knows a whole lot about the project. So with that, let me bring in Bobby Duplanche. He's the senior project manager with the Corps of Engineers, overseeing the Comite River Diversion Project. So Bobby, first off, thanks for being here this morning. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you for inviting me on. I always love an opportunity to be able to explain the project and talk to people about it.
Yeah, so you and I were chatting briefly before we started. So you said you've been involved with this project on the order of 10 years now. Give us an update on where we stand with the project right now. We're now kind of into the first week of September. Give us an update on where things stand right now.
We are with the project. Yeah, so it's interesting that we start off with how long I've been involved with the project because this project has been around since the 1980s, and it's kind of gone through a bunch of phases and iterations, I would say, as far as the actual construction sequencing and things like that of the project. So, early on, when we were talking the 80s and 90s and even into the 2000s, this project operated under extremely tight budgets. We were subject to something known as incremental funding, which means that the funding for this project would kind of come in dribs and drabs, and never really give us the amount of money that we needed to actually do some substantial work on the project. Um, that has its own set of challenges, but the project took a major shift when the project was fully federal funded in the 2018 timeframe. And that's really that really marked the point of really aggressive construction contracts for this project. Um, that was a huge help, and a special thanks to the congressional delegation, Congressman Gray, Senator Cassidy, who enabled us to get that full federal funding. But it's important to remember that that initial funding was the start of the project. Um, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have a whole bunch of money on the project, so we were not able to fully design the project. We were kind of building a Lily Bayou structure. We were strategizing on how to construct the Highway 61 structure. But past that, there wasn't a whole lot of design that had gone on with the project. So in 2018, when we got the money, that was the first undertaking that we really did. Because we were no longer incrementally funded, we didn't have to attack this project one feature at a time. We were able to look at the whole project, the whole 21 contracts, and say, let's begin design on everything all at once. And that really expedited the plans to completion on this project. So again, it's 21 total contracts. 18 of those construction contracts are USACE led. 3 of those construction contracts are LADOTD led. They're one of our major non-federal partners for this project. There are other partners. There's East Baton Rouge Parish, who's going to be doing the operation and maintenance. There's the Amite River Basin Commission, who does a ton with this project. But LADOTD is the financial responsible party for the non-federal share, as well as the real estate and the relocations. So I mentioned those because once we do get the design done, the next step, the next phase of the project is to actually go out and acquire that land that the design says that we need. So DOTD has done an excellent job with that. They've gone out, they've acquired it. Quite a few, 85 parcels were actually acquired. And each of these parcels are individual landowners. You have to negotiate, you have to come to agreement, you have to execute agreements with each of them. And then comes the relocations part of it. So we're talking over 150 utilities just within this 8-mile stretch. So they've had to execute reimbursement agreements with each of those. Each utility is individually owned. So they design their relocation and they're actually responsible for performing their relocation. So as of right now, We have 10 of those projects that are actually ongoing. 4 of them are going to be completed by the end of this calendar year in December, and 9 are going to be completed by the end of next year. And that leaves us with about 5 remaining contracts, which are pending utility relocations.
And
So
given
that's kind of an overall status of where we are.
Okay, so given those 5 remaining that'll be at the end of next year, and I know one big thing is the relocation of this gas pipeline. That's been one of the big hangups. Do we have an estimated completion date now? We've heard of a couple of delays lately, so do we have an estimated completion date?
Yeah, so that pipeline is a very important pipeline. It provides natural gas to a large portion of the southeast of the United States, and yes, that relocation is huge. It's a 30-inch high pressure gas line that needs to be relocated underneath our channel. So we've been in close contact with the folks at Energy Transfer, Florida Gas, and they have recently come out with a schedule for them to actually remove that pipeline. So we've been working with that. We've tied that into our own construction schedules. And now we're looking at a range of a construction completion for the entire project in the late 2024, early 2025 range. And again, that range is dependent upon how soon that the utility can actually be moved and relocated.
All right, so let me play the role of a resident impacted by the Comite. Where I live, I won't be really directly impacted by this project, but what we hear is, you kind of touched on, so this project initially conceived in the wake of the 1983 flood, way back, almost 40 years ago, right? And then in the year 2000 is when taxpayers started, they approved paying tax dollars into this. So how is it, this is what people want to know, how is it 22 years later that we're still looking at a few more years before this is done? How have we gotten to where we are now?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the point earlier I made about, incremental funding. Again, that was a huge hindrance on a project of this magnitude. So, really that the real focus on not just the section, the focus on the entire project as a whole did not happen until 2018, because there was no funding to actually go through and look at the entire project as a whole system. So, when we got that funding in 2018, we immediately went to work designing all 21 of those features. Then we go through the actual real estate. There's a misconception that, once funding is provided, you immediately go to construction. That would be great if it was the case, but it's not. We have to actually acquire the land from individual landowners. We have to then relocate the utilities. Then and only then can we move forward with the construction. Now, speaking from the, like you said, the perspective of a resident, I understand the frustration. I really do. I understand the importance of this project, not only to the state, but to the entire region. It's a huge economic driver, and it's going to really produce some great benefits in the area. I would just tell them that, work is moving at a pace on this project that it has never, ever seen before.
Yeah, so what I hear from some people is they've been a little frustrated this year in particular, because at one point it seemed like, we'd either be near completion or maybe at completion at this point. And there's been maybe some changing timelines, particularly on this gas line issue. Can you tell us more what's going on with the gas line? And do we now, or do you now feel more confident that that's going to be in this latest timeline you just provided, of hopefully being done by late 2024, early 25? Do you feel more confident now after we've seemingly heard of a couple of delays this year?
Yes, my confidence level in the completion date of this project is extremely high. And that is because of our close partnership with the Energy Transfer and Florida Gas. When we talk about, these pipelines, or these utilities, I should say, they really run the gambit of everything from telecommunications to, the opposite side of that, which is the more complex, gas line. So these companies that operate these lines, they are subject to a whole different set of regulations and laws. There's permitting, there's regulatory agencies and watchdogs that they have to make sure that they check all of their boxes to make sure that they are not violating any laws. Outside of that, even with these utilities, you have to make sure that service is maintained. They're providing natural gas to the east coast of the United States. You can't exactly go through and shut it off and bury the line. You have to maintain commerce. So that being said, I do have a high level of confidence in the schedule that they provided to us, and it's a very detailed schedule, which I'm very happy about. And they're in the middle of designing their actual pipeline relocation now. So I had a call with them just yesterday, sat down with their engineers, with my engineers, and we kind of looked at it, make sure everybody's on the same page with this actual relocation that's going on. And even further, we're looking at opportunities as far as sequencing that, maybe we can start some of our work a little bit earlier, depending upon what their final plan is going to look like. So there may be an opportunity for some overlap, some concurrent construction to go on as they finish up their work.
All right, now promise I'm going to come back to what is the great benefit of this project here in just a moment. But I know in the role you're in and having been at this project for 10 years, you've heard your share of criticism, no doubt, and I know you've probably developed a thick skin. So the other day, State Representative Valerie Hodges spoke with one of our reporters, Lester Dewey, and I want to play this little bit of sound from her and get your reaction. So this is what she had to say the other day.
I think someone should be fired. If this was the private sector, someone would have lost their job. Because, Lester, it's almost criminal to say, well, we forgot about this, or we didn't think the project was going to really happen, and so we didn't do what we needed to do.
Okay, so when you hear that, Bobby, what is your reaction to that? I know that's kind of a harsh criticism, but she's kind of speaking probably as a resident would. I know there's been a lot of frustration. So how do you react when you hear something like that?
Listen, it's something that I hear a lot, and trust me, I do understand it. I know Representative Hodges personally. We've spoken on the phone several times. We've had conversations outside of this project. And look, she is someone that was impacted a great deal by the 2016 flood, and her and all of the residents that were impacted, I understand, believe me, I understand the importance of the project and the need to get this done as quickly as humanly possible. I do understand it. And as we explained to her, there are certain things that have to be met before we actually go to construction on a project. We work closely with her staff, the rest of the congressional delegation, the rest of the members of the Comite River Diversion Task Force, who kind of keep us on our toes and make sure that we are delivering as expeditiously as possible.
All right, so having gotten past that, let me ask you this. Give us a breakdown on how this is going to benefit the region. Give us a little more specifics on, once this is completed, what can we expect out of the Comite River Diversion in terms of the benefits?
This project is going to be an integral part of the flood risk reduction in this region. It's not a silver bullet that's going to alleviate all of the flooding in the area, but it's really going to help a lot. We've done some hydraulic modeling on what this project will do in place, and it's going to reduce flood stages at certain events anywhere from a few inches to over 7 feet in some areas. That is a significant flood risk reduction that's going to be seen by some residents. I think there's a big misconception out there about, what we're actually building in the field. I hear it referred to a lot as the ditch and different things like that. It is a major engineered channel. It is not digging a ditch. We are basically reshaping the earth in this area. When you talk about the 8-mile channel, you're talking 30,000 cubic feet per second flowing through there. And that's, we're talking water, the equivalent of the Arkansas River, that's going to be flowing from the Comite over to the Mississippi. So you're going to get those major flood stage reductions along the Comite. But what a lot of people don't know is there's another component to this project. I always tell people this project is basically digging a channel from the Comite River to the Mississippi River. The challenges that you hit are the things that you bisect when you go from the Comite to the Mississippi. You hit state highways, you hit that bridges have to be built over, you hit railroads, you hit the utilities we talked about. But three of the things that you also hit are bayous, drainage bayous. And these bayous are going to, as local communities like Zachary and Baker are able to get their flood water into these bayous, those bayous would then drain into our channel. And again, all that water is going to come off of the system. That water, so we're going to take water off of the Comite and then off of the three bayous into our channel and push all that water out into the Mississippi River so it is out of the region.
Yeah, so let me ask you this question. You mentioned previously to me that this is going to be gravity fed, not involve pumps. And with that in mind, kind of, you said automatically triggered when the Comite hits a certain level. So I guess a two-part question. A, do we know what that level is? And part B is, what happens if the Mississippi River is running high? You know, this year is one of the first years in recent memory the Mississippi wasn't particularly high. What if we run up against a big rain event here locally and the Mississippi's running high?
Yeah. So so that's actually one of the things that I really like most about this project is that it is all gravity fed. You know, there's a lot of lessons that the Corps learned from Katrina and things and different storms like that, where, you know, this project it doesn't require a pump station. It doesn't require, you know, human intervention. It doesn't require someone to be out there. At, you know, once the Comite gets to the proper stage, it is going to flow over the weir into our channel and out to the Mississippi River. So so when it goes out to the river, if there is a high river event, we feel that we're still going to be very safe because the structure at Lily Bayou, which is the last structure in our system, is over the levee height in the region. So we looked at the I believe it was the 2018 high river event, and we kind of modeled that to see what would happen with the Comite in place, and it still would not have had any additional impact. The Mississippi River is moving such a volume and quantity of water that we're not going to have any situation where we're going to get black flooding from the Mississippi. And again, what we're moving is a drop in the bucket in the Mississippi.
No, that's great to hear. That's one of the things I had wondered about, if we could ever be in a case where the Mississippi couldn't handle, didn't have the capacity to handle whatever we might be delivering from the Comite diversion. You did kind of reference some numbers earlier. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
No, I'll just say it's a really good question because, you know, a lot of the systems that the Corps designed are, you know, made for hurricane protection. And those are things that you can kind of regionalize and you say, you know, we have a season for these storms. But with rain events, there's no real season for them. They can really pop up at any time. So we had to look at, you know, what if this rain event, what if this, you know, 2016 event were to happen, you know, with the Mississippi River being high, just to make sure we wouldn't be creating any adverse impacts.
All right, so you lead me into a couple of other questions. First off, you mentioned some numbers earlier. I want to play another soundbite here from Representative Hodges from the story the other day, where she kind of mentioned some of those numbers. You did too, and then I want you to explain these a little bit. So let's listen to this real quick, and then I'm going to get you to comment.
The impact is a 7-foot reduction in Zachary, a 5-foot reduction in Central, and a 3-foot reduction here in the Watson area, and 6 inches to a foot in Dim Springs. So it's a significant amount.
Okay, so obviously that's not going to be every event. What sort of event are we talking about when you reference those numbers of maybe bringing it down as much as 7 feet?
So we're talking in those areas, we're talking anywhere between the 50 and the 100-year event that we're going to see those max stage lowerings. And those events are very important, but you have to keep in mind that those aren't the events we see the most of. It's the, you know, 3 and 5 year events that this project is really going to, you know, going to shine. But yeah, she's absolutely right with those figures. When we're talking 50 to 100-year events, that's when we get into the 6 and 7 foot range of stage lowerings.
And I was also glad to hear you say a few moments ago, this is not a silver bullet solution. I sometimes worry that some people in the public kind of perceive it that way, or maybe don't understand there's limitations with any design and project and what can be accomplished. Has the Corps or has anyone done a detailed analysis on what this diversion project would have done had it been in place for the 2016 flood?
Yeah, we have looked at those numbers, and I'll tell you, rainfall events are very tricky to model. We can look at, what would have happened in 2016 and say, it may be great, but what happens if the rain event is a little bit further east or a little bit further west? Each rain event is so unique. Now, when we look at the 2016 event, we're talking, in estimates of like 1,000-year event. So with our system designed for a 50 and 100-year event, would it have helped? Yes, it would have helped. Would it have alleviated flooding? No, it wouldn't. It's a part of a system. Also included in that system is preparedness, different things like that. So yeah, we have looked at it, and that's a really good point. There's other projects that we're undertaking in the area, but I really like the message that the Comite River Diversion Project is not a silver bullet. Will it help? Absolutely. Is it the end all and be all? No, it's not.
No, I'm really glad you cleared that up, because I hear that a lot, and I think people, there are at least some that feel like that they probably overestimate the benefit that would have been there in 2016 if this was in place. But that was such an extreme event. And you've really clarified what the design capacity is here versus that 2016 event. You're talking different orders of magnitude there. So I think people really need to absorb that and understand that. And also you make the great point about where the rain falls. Every single rain event is so different, and it's a challenge to model those and represent what's going to happen with each event. So I think those are a couple of great points. All right, I've kept you a while. Just a couple more questions before I let you go. So one of the things you referenced earlier on was, part of the delays here were that there was no real continuous source of funding or significant funding up until about 2018. We're now at that point where we looks like we can see the finish line. Once we get to the finish line, though, it's not really the finish line. There's going to be maintenance and upkeep. Who's going to be responsible for that? And do we have the dollars for that? Or is that another challenge that we're going to have to face going forward, is finding the dollars for the maintenance and upkeep?
Yeah, really, really good points. As I mentioned earlier, this project is a partnership. We don't go at this alone. And I mentioned earlier our relationship with LADOTD, as they provide funding, they provide the real estate, the relocations, and things like that. But there's also another partner, the East Baton Rouge Parish, and we work very closely with those guys. And I mentioned them because they are, per the agreement, the actual entity that's going to be handling the operation and maintenance of the project. Now, kind of when I mentioned earlier about, about having not a lot of human interaction and no pump stations and things like that, that really plays into our favor when we talk about operating and maintaining the project. The dollars on those actual O&M costs, we won't have the full number until everything is fully designed and implemented, but those are going to be significantly less than if we had a operation and maintenance that required human intervention. So East Baton Rouge is on board. They're with us at all of our meetings, and they're going to be handling the operation and maintenance of the project. And I can tell you that those numbers are going to be significantly reduced by the way that we did design the project. Different things like, rock line in the channel. That's going to provide a lot more resiliency than, just an earthen channel that has to be maintained over time. So we're putting a lot of features in place with that future mindset, understanding that O&M is a real thing, and how do we reduce those costs up front as much as we can.
Okay, so and then part of the maintenance, even as you say, you've designed this to really hopefully lower the maintenance through time, but there's always got to be cleaning and snagging. I'm sure it's going to have to be that for the canal. There has to be that for the bayous that you referenced for the Comite itself. You know, is that all part of the master plan here?
Yeah. So once we finish, these actual designs and get everything implemented, we're going to develop operation and maintenance actual manuals to hand over to East Baton Rouge. And they're going to give very specific guidelines and triggers on the things that have to be maintained for this project to function the way that it was designed. So yes, it's going to be some, snagging and clearing and things like that. We don't anticipate a lot of work that's going to be happening in the channel. And if it is, it's going to be at much higher frequencies. We may be looking at every 10 or 20 years going through and clearing that out a little bit. But I'm really happy with what I'm seeing so far as what those operation and maintenance requirements are going to be.
All right. I think you've given us some great information today, and hopefully especially the residents that are directly impacted by this. The residents are frustrated that have been waiting on this for decades in some instances. So we know it's been difficult on a lot of people. All right, so where can people go to stay updated going forward, Bobby? Does the Corps have a website, or where can they stay updated on the progress?
Yeah, we do. We do have a website, and we also have a Facebook page. What I can do is I'll send it to you after this call, and maybe we can link it in the description of your video.
Absolutely. I can definitely make that happen. Well, Bobby Duplanche, Senior Project Manager with the Corps of Engineers, overseeing the Comite River Diversion Project. Thank you very much. I know I took a lot of your time today, but this is such an important topic. We know it's important to so many in our area, so we wanted to give them a full update. Thank you again.
Understood. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Hopefully you learned a little bit there about the Comite River Diversion Project. I know I did, and I thought there was some really great information, some great updates on what to expect going forward with this project. As always, you can catch all the episodes of Coast and Climate live on WAFB Plus Thursdays at 10 o'clock, and the episodes live indefinitely, infinitely, however you want to say it, on our website, WAFB.com, and also on our YouTube channel. Working on line up our next guest, but I'll be back here next Thursday at 10 o'clock. Hope to see you then.